Planning, Zoning, and Housing meeting for March 7th to order. So we have a guest tonight, Jeremy Ginsberg, who's going to discuss the land use department budgets with us. But before we get to that, we have yet another Great Island lease to discuss. Hopefully everyone saw that, which I emailed around. If you guys recall at the last RTM meeting, when Monica gave the Great Island report, she mentioned that the stable operator and one of the stable apartments, because it was rented by the stable operator, have left the stables, so that just left one tenant in there. And they asked that tenant to move so that they don't have to pay for utilities for that whole stable structure. So that's what this lease of 20 Great Island Road is. It's the moving the tenant who's currently in the stable apartment to a house that I'm told is either adjoined or right next to the mansion building on the property, to the extent anyone's interested.
Yeah, there are two units that are sort of semi-attached to that.
Okay. So otherwise, the lease is the same, the rent is the same as the individual was paying for the stable property. That 20 Great Island Road was not previously tenanted. There wasn't somebody in there before. So it's really sort of a wash as far as the revenue side of things, but because it's a lease of town property, we do have to approve it. So any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
All right, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you. All in favor? Excellent. All right, so with that excitingness out of the way, Jeremy.
Sure. Talk a little bit tonight about the planning and zoning and building department budgets. We'll start with the word uneventful, but I'll run through for you kind of what it's all about. You'll see that overall it's basically flat over last year, so there's generally no increase. But we'll talk a little bit about why there's various line items in the budget, much of them having to do with employee salaries, full-time salaries. There are no real seasonal or temporary folks in either department. But for planning and zoning, the salaries pay the employees, and the overtime is to cover evening meetings for union employees, of which we have 3 union employees who attend meetings. There's money in the budget for training for commission members, which is a new state statute requiring commission members to have training. That might be going to a conference somewhere else in Connecticut.
So Jeremy, their training line looks like it's zeroed out.
No, there's zero increase. That's the building department.
I'm sorry, thank you.
So in planning and zoning, there's conferences and meetings and
Sorry about
training,
that.
which are essentially the same thing. Dues and licenses covers professional licensing for our staff, such as myself.
Sorry, I just want to ask a question about the training. Does the town pay just for the fees for the training, or do we pay for the volunteer commissioners? I'm wondering
Volunteer commissioners
to get there and everything.
Correct. Sometimes there's travel involved. There's a registration fee sometimes, but it's also for staff. Continuing education, we're required to get continuing education credits. So we have to oftentimes go to conferences, meetings, educational seminars, webinars. It's a requirement that we get a certain number of hours every year. And again, the current state statutes require planning and zoning commission members and ZBA members. There is now a statute floating around Hartford to also require environmental protection commission members to have.
Do the alternates attend as well?
Alternates have to attend, is one of the requirements. And there is a requirement in the state statute as well for me to report such to the RTM. So I did give Seth a couple weeks ago the summary that all the commission members did as required by state statute. So not only are there state statutes telling you what to do, there's a state statute telling you you have to write a report saying that you did.
How many continuing education hours do you have to?
For staff, to maintain our certification, I think it's 32 hours every year or two.
Oh, that's significant.
It is a lot.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So some sessions are really good.
Do the seminars usually have like, do you have these like, you know, all day long things where
There is
they will
one.
fill their credits or?
There is one, I think Amy went to it, it's every other March, Connecticut Bar Association sponsors it. Starts at 9 a.m. and goes to about 4 in the afternoon
Oh,
on a variety of different topics. So that's really well done
yeah,
and moves at a good enough pace that you can keep up with it. But you usually find, there was a FEMA seminar today that I missed, but
that's,
there's always something, you have to keep your eye on it.
yeah,
But yes, it's more and more becoming a requirement for many businesses, whether it's architecture, attorneys, whatever. So it's just the world we live in these days.
right.
And you can see now even volunteers are being required to attend. I think they have to attend 4 hours every year. So if any of you who are thinking of volunteering for the land use boards, that will be one of the, not only the evening meetings you need to attend here, the homework you'll do behind the scenes, it's also the state required hours of training.
But it's
So-
all very fun, don't talk anybody out of it.
I'm not talking anybody out of it, but
I
So
actually,
exciting.
I actually think it's the responsible thing to
it
do.
is. And,
So even though, yes, it's a commitment, I think it's important.
right,
Yeah.
and the commission members,
And actually surprised that environmental, they hadn't had it. I think it's actually makes sense that they would have to.
there's a requirement that the certain training be done, but now it's going to become more expansive, more extensive.
Oh,
What's interesting about the advertising budget, that's been a long time line item in our budget, because under state statute, we're required to publish legal notices for various applications coming before the boards and commissions, and any actions they're taken thereunder. There's a bill pending in Hartford to possibly eliminate that. That would save the town of Darien about $13,000 a year, every year, till the end of time. We are one of 169 communities in the state of Connecticut. So that's 13,000 on average. We're a pretty average town in terms of size. Multiply by 169, multiply till the end of time. That's how much communities would save if this bill passes.
You can imagine that the
that'd be-
newspaper
I was just
is
thinking that
already
Hearst is sweating.
yes, they're voting against the bill, but it's,
Then raise the price of the obituaries.
from, just to, I was at a meeting last night, and it does look promising that even in the short session, that bill might get through, so.
Very
we'll see.
surprising.
Yeah,
Because it's been on.
it's been around for a while, but
Forever.
hopefully, I mean,
So-
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But again, when you talk to people who come to the counter and say, how did you find out about this? It's rare that I see people say, I read about it. In the hard copy version of the newspaper. Very rare. So, and that is the argument that many towns are making, that with all due respect to Hearst, and they're the only ones producing a product, that people get their information in different ways these days.
Right.
I mean,
They're also having, there are also problems with the fact that there are not newspapers of general circulation in certain towns, so they're not actually even able to comply with the statutory
Right.
requirements. So, I would say there's not a plan to stop publicly noticing hearings. That's not the plan at all, but it's doing it a different way, whether it be on the town website or having it
Right.
somewhere
There
else.
will still be some formal notice. I'm sure towns will still have that option if they wish to pursue it. So something to look at going forward. There may be some cost savings going forward, and whether the state can put some statewide bulletin board up or some other place that people will know to look. So to be continued. I think we do a good job here in Darien through the town now has, if you're not, follow our Facebook or Instagram, or the First Selectmen's newsletter, or town website, or Channel 79. There are many ways that didn't even exist 10 years ago to get information about where's this meeting, when is this meeting, what's going on in the building, etc. So we shall see on that, but there is a line item for that, and we've kept it the same. Consulting services is, we use that really for a number of items. First and foremost is our GIS, our computer mapping program. If you see online, it's called MapGeo. It offers the general public the ability to look at zoning map, wetland map, flood maps, basic ownership information. It's really a good product. We like to keep it updated. The next update is going to occur next month. We just got some new wetlands information. Hopefully PPC can adopt a new map and we'll get that up and running. Much of the consulting money goes towards that. There is another piece of that money that's going towards engineering review, outside engineering reviews. So if someone brings an application before a land use board, that this outside engineer will peer review it, make sure that all the engineering checks out. So we do have a line item for consulting, again, fairly flat. Software maintenance and support covers the various software packages we use, including but not limited to our OpenGov portal, which is used for permits, applications. It's proven to be a very big success. Eases the burden on property owners, applicants, attorneys, title searchers, realtors, a lot more transparency. So people don't have to come to this building to track down a plan, a permit, an application. So it's really a great public service, and it really puts the burden on us as planners because everything is visible. When we looked at a plan, when we approved a plan, what we said at the time, it's all out in the open. So that makes it much better for everyone.
Is there any plans to upload the balance of the documents that have been scanned in that are on the computers here but aren't available in Viewpoint?
What we think, and we are in the process of working, and that's the professional services line item. You see 3,500 going down to 2,700.
Mm-hmm.
We think we have scanned nearly all our files. There's a few, just ones you find, you're like, how did this one not get scanned? Or pieces of a file that haven't gotten scanned. We are very close to the point that everything is in the system.
Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm saying, but it's all in the system on the computers here, but it's not available online.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying. Is there any plan to migrate all of that information so that you can review the historical information from home as opposed to having to come into the offices, since it's in the computer already?
Yeah, we're going to have to spend some time to do that. Figuring out a way to take the computer files that are in the hallway and get them on the web somehow.
Yeah.
So that may be some kind of next step, that hopefully we can do that without outsourcing it.
Okay. I mean, I would, as a heavy user of the system, I would put in a plug for making that something we would do.
So we no longer have to get out the big books and flip.
You mean in the town clerk's office?
Yeah.
That's totally
You're saying-
separate. That's totally separate.
Oh, I got that.
But
one.
the town
But
clerk-
also, yes, they're
Okay.
online,
Eventually.
mostly online. Not all of it's online, but most
Yeah,
of
the
it.
town clerk, I think all the maps are online.
No, none
Not-
of the maps
not-
are online. That's
Oh.
actually the most annoying part. None of the maps
Really?
are online. The town clerk deeds going back to like 2000, maybe 2003 are online. And then you gotta come into the town hall to look back further than that.
So,
But those you have to pay for, because it's a outsourced company
Service.
where it's all service. The planning and zoning stuff is free. Anybody can look at it
Okay.
and print it out.
So what the advantage of our OpenGov system now is, in the old days, we would have people bring in hard copy, then we would scan it, and then throw away the hard copy. Now we're just telling people, you upload them.
We spend hundreds of dollars on printing them to give to you, so you don't throw them away.
So we're,
Yeah, especially when we were printing 10
10
full-size
to 15,
copies.
Yes, of
Yeah.
100 pages of construction drawings
Yeah,
sometimes.
and then you make one change and suddenly you gotta reprint the whole package. It was fun.
so saving a lot of trees, a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort. So
Yeah.
that's been quite a
Huge
All
success.
commendable, sir.
Huge
We are
improvement.
trying.
Thank you.
We are trying. Clerical services is a very minor increase. Basically, that allows stenographer to come to our meetings, record them, and if we do need a transcript, she's able to produce a transcript as required by state statute. Printing, much less than ever, again, as more and more people rely on the internet, the town website for maps, plans, etc. The printing budget is just the minimal, basically to get a handful of resources for our board members to use, zoning regulations, zoning maps. But what's interesting about the budget more so is the two capital projects. So I wanted to take a little time to talk about those. First, which has already been approved and underway, is the stormwater management manual update and associated zoning regulation amendments. A few years ago, the Darien Public Works Department worked with on putting together a stormwater manual, both looking at water quality and addressing water quality. What are the town standards going to be? And then taking that information and putting it into local zoning regulations. So as developers and builders come in, what do they have to build towards for their houses, projects, whatever? 50-year storm, 100-year storm. How do they have to treat water quality? What other parameters do we want in terms of maintenance? So right now we are working on the manual update, working with the engineers over in Public Works, an outside engineering firm. And then the next part of that, which will start in a few months, is look at section 880 of the Darien zoning regulations, which deals with drainage, to look at upgrading in terms of what size storms do we look at, how do we deal with current standards in the stormwater management. So we're working on that, and
Have those standards changed with climate change?
standards have changed because storm sizes have changed.
Right,
So
okay.
how do we want to look at things? Do we want to be a little stricter than we were maybe 10 or 15 years ago? How strict is too strict? If someone's putting on a 6x10 shed, do they need to hire an engineer for a drainage plan? Most of us would say no, that would be overkill. But, so finding the right amount of engineering for each solution, the amount of impervious surface or work you're doing to your property, that's what we're trying to do, is find the right balance. So we're working on that, and you'll see and hear more about that probably over the summer as we continue to work towards that. The next capital item, which we put in the budget, is really a 3-year project, is an update of the 2016 Town Plan of Conservation and Development. Town plan is required to be done through section, I think it's 8-23, the state statutes, which requires that a community do a town plan every year. The town plan takes about 3 years to do. So if we want to finish ours in 2026,
Every 10 years,
and what did I say?
every year.
Every
Yeah,
time.
every time.
It takes 3 years to do something that takes that you have to do every year.
So again, the state is saying you have to do these. So 2026, back it up 3 years. We really need to get started later this year. So you're going to see us pulling together consultants, having a meeting once every month or so. You may recall, if you were around last time, some of the meetings were held in the Mather Center as we talked about various aspects of the plan. So again, starting over the summer into the fall, you'll hear and see a lot more about that project getting underway, and it's a multi-year project as we wind our way through the system.
Are you planning on using the same consultant again, or is there an RFP or something going out?
Right, we did approach Glenn Chalder of Planometrics, who worked on our last town plan, asked if he would be interested, and he said, well, these projects take 3 years, and within the next 3 years, I would like to be retired. So with all due respect, I'm not going to be bidding on your project. So, well, that's fine. So we're going to have to go out, yeah, rather than leaving us in the lurch.
She's really good.
Yeah.
So it's a shame, but we'll have to try someone new, and so we'll be going out to various consultants.
So this is, at this point, the 145 is an estimate, because you haven't gotten any bids in yet.
Correct, no firm bids are in, but you need that budget placeholder.
Sure.
So that's, looking at the budget, again, it's very much what we're doing is status quo, yes.
I'm relatively new to this committee, so I don't know what is normal for an increase, like, and it's the same thing with the RTM, we always get things like this year, last year, but we don't get to see further back. Is 3%, I know there's inflation, but is 3% just like a very standard, or is it sometimes like 10%? What's in,
I think it depends on what's going on in the department. Sometimes if you're
Yeah.
buying a new piece of software,
Yeah.
or starting a new program or something, or hiring new employees, you might see that jump even more.
okay.
I think what's interesting here is a lot of what, and Jack can talk a little bit more about it, is what it really drives town hall are the employees. Right? It's a very labor-intensive business. We don't have any big machines that we're operating or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's the people, paying the planners to show up to work every day, do their job. So you'll see that usually the major change is the salaries.
Yeah.
Everything else is buying another couple reams of paper or
Sure.
getting some new letterhead. So usually what the instructions from the Board of Selectmen are, try to keep everything in line with inflation.
Mhm.
We understand if, you're gonna need a new machine of some sort,
Right.
but please, I think your point's a very good one. And that's the instruction we get coming from the top.
Mhm.
Anything higher than the rate of inflation, we're gonna start raising some eyebrows.
Right,
But
okay.
that's about the rate change in salaries. Although you do have an increase because of the training, but that's because that's coming down from the state that you have to do
Right,
the
that
additional
becomes
training.
one of the problems is, you'll see in a lot of departments, any changes usually come about because of state mandates.
If I might add something from going long-term.
Negotiated labor increases.
Yes.
Pre-negotiated.
If we have things like we've just had the 3 major developments, hence we need more building inspectors to be able to meet it, that's things that you will see in the budget, it'd be in the building department. But the same way that we're seeing the increase in the staff over the last several years, because we had it on hold and then they just weren't starting the buildings, we've seen a significant increase in the revenues associated with that, so that while the Board of Selectmen, you don't see a net amount, because we take away the revenue for what we need to raise for taxes, the reality is that when we are bringing on extra building people, or there was one time that Jeremy had to add somebody into P&Z to accomplish something, the fact of the matter is the revenue pays for it, especially in these 2 departments.
So actually, that's the one thing you haven't talked about yet, is the revenue side of the planning and zoning part of the budget.
Could I just ask how many full-time salary employees are in the department?
Right, we have 2 secretaries, 2 full-time secretaries, myself, and then 4 other planners. One who works with the Environmental Protection Commission, one who works with the Zoning Board of Appeals, a zoning enforcement officer, myself, and Assistant Director Fred Jonette.
Okay. So about 7.
7. As Amy said, one thing we didn't touch on is revenue. Our revenue really comes from a number of items. One is zoning and building permits. When Mike comes in for a building permit for a shed, or a deck, or to add on your house, or solar panels, or whatever, the precursor to a building permit is a zoning permit. The cost of a zoning permit is based on the value of the work. So we get some revenues there. The other way we get revenue is from land use board applications. You go to the Wetlands Board, the Architecture Review Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning and Zoning Commission, there's an application fee. So for example, the Zoning Board of Appeals application fee is $700. They get about 40 applications a year, so 700 times 40. Oh, but one trick, the state of Connecticut gets $58 of each application. So we have to subtract out $58 for each application and ship it off to Hartford. I'll leave it at that.
And those fees were increased a few months ago, and we
Right, we increase them every couple of years.
voted on at the RTM. Are you, so do you feel pretty good about the revenue numbers that you have in here?
I do feel,
In terms of what's coming through, what you're seeing coming through the
Right,
pipe?
what you look at is the routine building, the building that everyone in this room might do on houses, decks, sheds, whatever. That's usually a baseline year to year. It's basically seasonal, but year to year, you have COVID where things are way down and then they go way up, but generally we have a good handle on that. What is different year to year are the bigger projects. So what you see going on in downtown and in Norotan Heights are unusual, they don't happen every year. So how does that affect the revenue we might see we're gonna talk planning and zoning right now, because all they get is their building permits for those. It's likely, we'll see some activity this year as they pull some permits for those buildings. We are likely to see more activity next year. You might see extra that you would not. So we've put in an increase of about $5,000 extra. So when you take out the applications, because those folks are building, they're not doing applications, there's a slice of the zoning permit fee. So we have built in an assumed increase there of revenue.
Can I ask a question on that? Is that because we're anticipating that other than the baseline for normal buildings that happen excluding those big guys, is part of the increase associated with the increase in the fee or just?
A little bit is associated with the increase in the fee. So we did build in a little bit there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
With only 22 houses for sale in Darien, that's got to affect long-term the
Even less.
renovation business. I mean, you were on a renovation roll for a while during COVID.
What we do see, COVID was interesting because for a few months, people weren't doing anything for obvious reasons. They didn't know what was going to happen. And then they found being home all day, their homes weren't nearly big enough. Or they wanted to build a home office or a home gym, which, right, if the gyms are closed, or pools, we'll see lots of swimming pools.
But I'll actually say to the contrary, sometimes when there's not a lot of inventory and people aren't buying new houses, they're
That's what I was
renovating
renovating.
the house they stay in.
Yes.
So actually sometimes when you see it down at the tax, from the town clerk's office as far as transfers, it'll be higher in planning and zoning.
Well, also I
Love it
imagine
or
as
list it.
house prices go up, people are more like, I'm gonna just
Yeah.
do with what I have
Yeah.
rather than,
Right.
right, which is,
What's happening now.
yeah.
So, any other questions on the planning and zoning department budget, and then we need to talk about building department, they're interrelated but slightly different. All right, wanna walk us through building now?
Sure, building is very similar fact pattern. You can see here, this is the one at the top that says last dated February 26th. Is that the one you have?
Yeah.
Okay. You can see full-time salary is down. We have the same number of people in the department, but there's been some rearranging. The office administrator passed away, so there's been some moving of employees and such that there'll be the same number of employees, but at a lesser salary. So you'll see that the dollar amount for full-time salary is down.
Have you already hired the replacement, or are you still looking?
Ashley, who was the secretary, has been promoted to office administrator, and we are interviewing for Ashley's position and hope to hire someone very soon. Overtime, there's not a lot of overtime in the building department budget. Oftentimes they have to report out on nights, weekends, if there's a situation that requires a building official or inspector to come out, an accident, car runs into a building, something like that. So there's not usually a lot of that. Conferences and meetings, trainings, dues, and professional licenses are all level. You can see here the scanning in the building department is complete, so they've eliminated that line item. So that's good. There is, from what I understand, a very small amount budgeted just to keep the microfilming. I think there is still some microfilming that they have to keep on file. Software maintenance and support, again, an important part of what we do, and of course, when you buy software, that increases a little bit every year. Telecommunications down a little bit, trying to be very efficient with the use of phones and more laptops in the vehicles. In the old days, the inspectors would come back to the office and write down everything on an index card. They're trying to do everything more and more out in the field after an inspection. Other items level, but I'm looking for the revenue number. I swear I had it.
Yeah, it's on here.
Yeah,
Sound
okay,
at the bottom.
Good.
Before you move on, and actually this is for, on both budgets, I just realized you have cars that are used by building officials and planning officials. Are those maintained by one of the other departments? Is that under Public Works?
It's interesting, in the old days, each department would have to put in their budget gasoline. We do not have to anymore, that's covered through Public Works. Similarly, they have a mechanic, so they fix everything. We do have a line item for what they call motorized equipment repair and maintenance,
Right, and it's zero.
which is
that's what we think
basically
of it.
car washes.
Where are the costs of the cars in the budget? Just in completely in Public Works budget?
Unless you're buying a new car, then it's in the capital.
Okay, but it's in Public Works capital, not in your capital.
I don't know.
Sometimes they get hand-me-downs.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of doing the best we can with what we have, so oftentimes police vehicles, it's important for the police to have the best vehicle, because if I break down somewhere, it's not the end of the world. If a policeman breaks down, it's a very bad thing. So it's important that they have very reliable vehicles, and they put a lot of mileage on it, and they're hard miles. So oftentimes you'll see cars and vehicles get moved around and repurposed for other departments.
Sorry for getting us off track
No
on that.
worries.
Yeah, and then, so then you've got the revenue number on the.
Revenue, certainly in building, we assume there will be a big increase for the simple reason that those major projects will be underway. There will be a lot of time, and what we've seen, at least with the Federal Realty project in Roten Heights, it's basically one inspector out there almost every day for 3 years, going to look at some aspect of the building, whether it's commercial or residential, and it's likely we will see that with these other projects. One inspector out each, almost every day
And
for
we have
years.
and we have the staffing at this point that we
Right.
need to be able to do that.
And that was one of the things we've been talking about, is being able to have someone to provide service to all of you when you build your house, that we are staffed such that everyone else will get very good service, while at the same time making sure those projects move along.
Are we gonna be overstaffed when these big projects end?
Well, certainly that's something we will continue to monitor. I'm sure there's other projects that will move into their place. Invariably there is. I'm
All those
always,
ADUs that are coming up.
Yeah.
And this is within the full-time salary budget, because you don't
That's
have
correct.
another line item.
right, there's no new employees being proposed.
And no capital projects for the building
No
department?
capital projects for building. They talk about a vehicle, but again, when we talk about rearranging, that's really Public Works is determining, and their expertise, which vehicles end up where and why.
Can I ask a question? Well, we're trying to put together an F&B, we're trying to look at a longer-term plan than just this one budget year. And so obviously, building revenues, investment income, and town clerk's income are important if we're starting to look out. But knowing that they're going to decline at some time, would you anticipate we have another, not counting 25, but will be good through 27, or will we start seeing the decline in the building revenue around 27? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, I apologize.
Well, certainly, the bulk of the projects now underway, we are in 2024, revenues will be paid in 25 and 26.
Okay.
There will likely be some in 27, but
If they run on time by 28, those 3 projects will be complete.
they'll be done by 20
There's like 26.
26 or 27.
Okay, okay.
What's the
Some of the
difference, what's the
fit-outs.
difference
Right,
in,
exactly.
what's the difference in
Retail.
personnel between a 10,000 square foot new build and a business, a home? You know, we have a number of big lots, you know, that are gonna be on the market. What's the difference in manpower in terms of building for a 10,000 square foot home versus something in Corbin?
You know, it's interesting, oftentimes, and I'm not a building official myself, but what we have to look for is a little different from a planning and zoning our department, zoning, what we would look for in a house is we would look more at the drainage system and the plan, whether it complies with the zoning. It's rare that I'll do, or anyone in our department will do a walkthrough of, say, a house, maybe real quick just to confirm that it only has one kitchen. Whereas, say, a restaurant, you get health department reviews, right? We might look at something different for restaurants. We might look at, hey, is the dumpster in the right place, the sign, whatever. So each one is you're looking at different things. I know as a building official, you might look at certain things in a house different than in a commercial. But certainly apartments where there's required fire marshal review. So they spend a lot of time over at Federal Realty looking at smoke alarms, fire alarms, things like that.
Do you anticipate ADUs becoming, as people with inspections and, I was a session today where Joe Warren talked about a fire that they responded to and they didn't know there was a ADU in a building where they thought no one was living there and there were 2 people living up there illegally, and do you anticipate inspections of potential ADUs that will be added? And will that add to the
I
work
don't
requirement?
expect that.
Okay.
Joe didn't tell me where those. When was this?
Last time we were here, we talked about that.
Associated with that, I have heard that one of the systems, maybe it's the GIS one, that when you started looking at some of the properties, that there were, I'm just gonna come up with what it might be, but there were like walls built, pools there that hadn't been reported. Is that anecdotal, or is that something that's been done?
I don't think your department goes looking for stuff.
No, I don't say they were, but they said that when they did.
Well, yeah, you
they
can see,
did,
'cause it's
they
all,
did.
we've got an aerial shot of the whole,
Yeah.
of every lot now, so you can see what's there.
Yeah, that
And
there's
you
a
can
shed
compare
that
it,
they didn't know.
you can very easily compare the aerial shot to the tax assessor's records, and they
But
may
no
not
one's
have.
doing
but-
Maybe that's the one that's doing it.
But they've all, but the tax assessor, what's interesting is the tax assessor has always, they're the ones that go out and do inspections, and they have always taxed you for stuff, whether you got a permit for it or not,
Yeah.
but they don't tattle. So that doesn't mean that the planning and zoning or building department comes out and smacks you for doing something without a permit.
Although we do catch people routinely for doing work without permits.
Correct. But that's when they're actively doing it, you're not going out to somebody and say, hey, I see you got a, I saw an aerial shot of a pool back there that you didn't get a permit for.
I don't think many people in this room would enjoy us. So I think that gives you a flavor for the budget is, as I said, uneventful might be the adjective I would use, is there's a lot going on in town, as you can see, a lot of inspections, a lot of plan reviews. Certainly we continue to work with numerous people who want to come to town, and we have a meeting on Monday about a potential commercial tenant that the health, fire, zoning, going to sit down with them and talk about, here's what you need to do to get up and running in town if you're interested. Federal Realty has a couple tenants coming in. They're not fully built out yet. So they have a Bear Burger is going in and a bagel shop is going in. So those are 2 more, they might be the last 2 commercial tenants, but I'm not positive. So a lot of demand
We
and
might have a couple more, only because I went to a meet
Yes, I-
thing, builders thing,
They might have some
developers. They were talking about.
Well, Naya and Sweet Green is getting way too much of my business.
Just one more question, sort of actually ties off of this whole idea of, people doing stuff without a permit. Do you find that most people are complying with the regulations, and do you think that there's any need to sort of better advertise, hey, you need to get a permit for these things that maybe people think they don't need to get a permit for?
I don't think so. I think 90-some% of folks really want to comply, really want to do a good job. 90% of the builders are really like,
Yeah.
really on the ball in terms of following up, making sure they're doing everything by the book. So we're very fortunate here to have that, because folks here know that you're gonna have a problem selling your house if it's not properly permitted. So from that standpoint, we are very fortunate. We do occasionally see problems, issues, people who change their mind, people, things happen, but for the most part, we're lucky. We do find people occasionally who made a change without telling us, whether it's minor or major, or something happened out in the field, someone did something, oh yeah, they went a little bit too far, whatever it is. So usually we're able to work with people on getting them back on track.
But not too much in terms of, I guess I'm more thinking about the person that doesn't even know that they need a permit to do X, Y, or Z. Sort of, you know,
Like
the
a
idea.
shed. You know, I think a lot of
I
people
think
would
we talk about
assume that a shed.
interior renovations too, and people thinking they're renovating their kitchen, they don't need a permit.
Right,
You do.
yeah. And so I think, you know, just sort of thinking of, we're getting rid of the advertising budget for public notices. Is there any,
That's a good point.
do you think there's any need for your department to be sort of more affirmatively getting out there and talking to people about what they, you know, what you need permits
Especially with
for?
the influx, the population increase from COVID, there
Is there
are
something
people
on the
new to town
website,
that may not
like what
know.
requires permit and what doesn't?
There is, we're also working with Marley Hayes, who works out of communications, the town hired her, Facebook, Instagram, newsletter, so she's always looking for something to report on, so to speak. So we're doing more and more press releases
Great.
in terms of getting the word out to people on different topics. You've all read about the rules at Great Island, right? And you didn't read that through the paper, you read it through the newsletter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. So that has proven to be very beneficial to all town departments in terms of getting the word out about some kind of project, road closure, work without permits. So we're always trying to, you know, usually in the fall we do something about please don't rake your leaves into the wetlands, whatever it might be. So we have a number of press releases ready to go.
Okay, great. All right, any other budget-related questions? All right, so I think I need to take a vote on whether or not we'll recommend approval of the budget to the RTM. So we're going to make a motion?
I would make a motion that
Thank you,
we
Dan.
vote on approving.
Can I get a second? Second. All right, all in favor? All right, great.
One other question.
Yeah.
Can you also vote separately on capital, please?
Oh, okay. So do we need to vote for each capital project separately?
No, it's
Okay.
just
One.
capital in
Oh,
total.
no, you have two in zoning.
Right.
Didn't the stormwater already, I think that was just in for informational, I don't think that's in for next year.
No, I know, but at least for the
Oh, I see what
plan
you're
of
saying.
conservation, the
Okay.
3-year.
Right,
But
yeah,
yeah,
the
they're gonna be
capital is gonna
reported
be done,
separately.
done this year, I see what you're saying, the stormwater is done this year, okay, sorry. So, can I get a motion to approve the capital, budget for the plan of conservation and development?
Sure.
All right, Dan, can I get a second? Second. All right, thanks. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack, sorry about that. All right, so while we have Jeremy, I also asked him to just give us, and we've sort of talked about it a little bit already, but, you know, an update on what's going on around town. Just sort of briefly, if you don't mind.
The two of the more significant approvals of planning and zoning recently have been the driveway to Great Island that they're going to start working on in a few months, from Rings End Road to the turnaround, widening, improvements, etc. And the other one is the Weed Beach Meadows and Trails project. The town purchased Short Lane about 10 years ago, and this would enable the Parks and Rec Department to hire consultants, go in and create basically a new area of the beach with some new sand, some sand dunes, and a large grassy area for people to relax and hang out. So that project is going out to bid next month, and hopefully can get underway before the year is out. We'll see. As you mentioned earlier, public hearing for Planning and Zoning Commission Tuesday on accessory dwelling units, whether to allow them in town or not, and if so, under what conditions and parameters. The hearing is at 7 o'clock in the auditorium, Tuesday night. I encourage you all to come out, listen to the conversation, give input, feedback, concerns. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea what the response of the public's going to be. So I'm curious, is anyone else to hear what people think? We've gotten a handful of comments, emails so far. So we encourage everyone to either send a letter, email to the commission, and then the commission's going to decide what to do, whether to have another hearing in a few months, to change the proposal, go with the proposal. I dropped the whole idea. No way to know. at
But
this
we're
point.
required to have a plan because we rejected the states, right? Or,
No, we were
Okay.
required to act upon the state, because the state said you have to allow this or opt out by a certain date, and the town did opt out.
right,
And now it's up to each town to decide if they want to do something.
Or not.
Because our plan,
Okay.
we have to affirmatively, our plan could be that we don't allow them in this town.
okay.
So that's what the commission's,
Okay.
And this is not going before the RTM.
It does
so,
not go before the RTM.
Us, as RTM members, this Tuesday meeting will be our opportunity to have input also.
As individuals.
Yeah.
As citizens.
Yeah. Even though we voted as the RTM on the opt-out,
Right.
Okay.
the regulation change does not otherwise come back before us. And that's, and that's important to understand that goes for this plan of conservation development also, which is, again, we're 3 years out, but it's a very important document that really oversees everything that the town does going forward, and that is going to include, they're going to time them together, the affordable housing plan as well. So that's another time where, although we sort of as an RTM, we're, talked about some of this, we're not going to get a chance to vote on as the RTM, so we've got to, as citizens, attend those meetings.
And actually clarifying the work of the commission was helpful in me understanding that, because the
Yeah.
commission is comparing it to the town plan.
Right.
So that's why they're involved and not us.
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Is that
It's great
correct?
to-
Okay,
yes.
okay.
I think it's great to address it now too, because I feel like the more people that come into town, more people want that generational living. They want their parents like right there, and if they don't have room in the house, they want to dwell in. And it's good to,
Well, affordability, as you know, is difficult in this town, so that's
Yes.
another option for people. Yeah.
Anything else, sort of major project-wise?
No, nothing else coming up. Those were the big ones, Great Island, Wheat Beach.
Did Thorndale get brought up about conversion to apartments?
Well, someone met with the commission informally to
Oh,
discuss
it did.
that.
I thought it was on the agenda at their meeting.
Right, it was at the agenda a couple weeks ago, they discussed it. No formal proposal has been put forth at this time. Sometimes people come in, sometimes they run things by the commission and then disappear. So we wait and see what could happen, no way to know at this time.
The Bank of America building, though, that is in, for that
Right,
is
7
in
Sedgwick,
deliberations
which is
now.
the former Bank of America across from Goodwife Shopping Center. There was a proposal to take down the bank and put in, I think it's 18 apartments plus or minus. The commission closed the hearing and will deliberate possibly as soon as this Tuesday night. And we'll see where that goes.
what type of space?
Luxury market rate apartment.
Or just
Just curious about the Wee Beach, we said the grassy area. Where is that going to be? Is that going to be that area where the swimming pool was once proposed? You know, that kind of overgrown area? Or is that a separate space? There's not much other
the
space
space up
there.
where the.
There's short
Or-
Behind the tennis
First
courts, I
year.
see, okay.
No,
No?
no, more towards near Waterloo.
So
Gotcha.
maybe in that.
Just south of the sewer plant. Do you know where the sewer plant is?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
part of that kind of
Between the
overgrown
Days
area.
Beach and our.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
not really.
That was
But-
once the proposed area for a swimming pool,
Could
as
be.
I remember, yeah.
That
We're
must
like
have been
the-
almost
we're
everywhere.
the-
Every 5 years or so.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the area you're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay.
For the financial aspects of that, the Darien Foundation will be making contribution of about $350,000. The initial estimate is $1 million. That, as Jeremy said, is going out to bid. because there are no final numbers on it, the Board of Selectmen has chosen to take it out of their capital budget, but with the hopes that the final numbers come in before our May 13th meeting, so that could be added back in, and then the Board of Finance would also determine how to pay for it. So it's not in the budget yet, because they withdrew it, but hopefully it'll be put back in, but we will have better numbers at that time.
But it has zoning approval, which is.
Yes.
Yes,
Everything.
yes.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions while we have Jeremy here tonight?
Can we ask them, Jeremy, can you just give a little bit of background on the bus issue?
no,
Okay.
because I have received nothing from the Board of Ed.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, fair
You want
enough.
me to say what, so, well, just so there's not a,
Hey, just so that.
So people know what Jack's
Yeah,
talking
So
about.
people know what Jack's
Go
talking
ahead.
about. One of the things that, that Jack's committee is voting on, although I don't know, at this point, I don't even know if RTM will vote on it at this month, but the Board of Ed is looking to buy buses for the,
Special.
for the
Special
special ed students. And because it's gonna be a huge cost savings over the chartered buses that are being used right now. And it will involve us ultimately at some point, because they've got to decide where to keep these buses. And depending on what happens, you know, maybe it won't, but the current proposal that I've seen, but is not final, which is why Jeremy is hedging, is that there may be a lease of property from one of the commercial property owners in town to house the buses. And so since that would be, you know, unlike us approving the leases of town property, we also have to approve every time the town leases town property. So that would then come before us. However, it is, at this point, there was a bit of a rush because they need to order the buses soon for various timing reasons, but we're not at the point where we know where we're gonna keep them yet, so it's a little premature for our committee. But we will certainly be hearing more about it as time goes on.
For
Perfect.
the financial
Thank you.
part, if you break it down, there's the P and Z part for where we're gonna put the buses. The second part is they need to buy buses, at least they've said by April 15th, which means our next meeting is the earliest that the RTM can deal with it to still allow them, plus with the 10 days has it to the 28th. The third part of it is what the savings are, which will be reviewed by the RTM members and the Board of Finance to determine what the actual savings are. There's some questions on what we've initially seen, and so both the Board of Finance and F&B has some additional questions. That will be done during the budget analysis, and basically, assuming that they save some money, it's going to be just determining what the return on investment is. But right now on our agenda for March 18th is the purchase, the special appropriation for $850,000 for the buses and Suburbans to be done. But we're still all going through that analysis.
Thank you.
Any other?
Enjoy your meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Good night, Chairman.
All right, agenda-wise, the only other thing we have to do is review and approve our minutes, which John sent around. Hopefully everybody had a chance to look at those.
I did not see.
I didn't.
All right, well, then we will table that, and I'll resend them. John sent them out directly, so maybe there's something when he, you used, John tried to use the email, the group email thing that I have for everyone, and maybe it doesn't work unless I send it, so.
Did it went to our personal or our town emails, or?
The same way that I send the emails, he just
Okay.
sent it. He used the same thing. So we'll table that, I'll resend them, so we can talk about those at our next meeting. Did anyone have anything else that they wanted to discuss?
What's the status of getting a meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust?
Yes.
I needed to meet with Jeremy because the chairman refuses to respond. I've sent him 4 emails as of tonight. I sent him another one while we were in this room tonight.
Okay.
One of the things I thought was interesting that you may have sent me or I saw.
Yeah, who
but
are you,
that-
who are you, I'm so sorry, I was reading
No,
something and I didn't
that's
hear.
okay.
Who are you emailing?
The Affordable Housing Trust.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think that maybe this came up before some people were on the committee, so let me just state where we are. So the town has an affordable housing trust fund, and it's a fund that has money in it that is, for the most part, whenever there are these big projects that come down, under the zoning regulations, they have to have a certain number of affordable units. And it's a mathematical equation. And they can put money into the trust fund either in lieu of building these units. A lot of times what happens is they'll end up with their mathematical formula, meaning that they have to build like 3.5 units. So they'll build 3, and instead of the half, they'll put money into the trust fund. There was a decent amount of money in that fund. My understanding is most of it was used by the town in connection with the Royal project. There's now more money has been put into it from Federated. They're expecting more money from some other units. I'll note that the Sedgwick project that Jeremy was mentioning, the commission actually, the chair of the commission actually encouraged them to not build any affordable units in that building and only put money into the trust fund. But the Affordable Housing Trust Fund
Has
board.
not met in years.
Yeah.
Oh.
So when I've been on PZ&H for what, 3 years? I don't know.
I mean, we're on
And at
board.
some point, I was asked to be our representative to it. But I had to figure out what the it was, because there was no agenda, there was no, public meetings. And that's when I found out some of the things that Amy just described. Also found out when I tried to reopen it again recently, that there was in fact money in it. Because first when I spoke with the chair, he said, well, there's no money in it, we don't really do anything, it's not really there. And then found out that no, there was some money that went into it relatively recently. But the bigger picture thing is, what do we want to do proactively? Other towns are looking at ways to proactively build an affordable housing fund through either contributions or through other forms of, I don't know what the right word is, but payments such as the ones that Amy just described, or other ways to fund it in addition, so that those funds can be used.
Yeah, my question is, what are those funds used for, and who can access them? Or is it just, that's locked in specifically?
No.
Okay.
That's why the board needs to meet.
Yes.
Right,
The board has to discuss and vote on the use of funds. There's,
Right.
so.
okay.
Wait.
So
Feedback without
it's baseline, we don't even know because they're not voting on it.
Right, but there's really only been one example of an
Okay.
expenditure, and that was the Royal. And I listened to, I think Mike sent it to me, a public hearing, or at least a meeting that Greenwich had. And what they found from some developers is that they look at sort of being or other public funding sources, look at ways to kind of be the last dollars into a project. So if a developer is doing an affordable housing project, and he or she or they may need another $250,000 to be able to complete the financing for it, they look at funds like this to help support it. In the case of
Okay.
the Royal, that similarly what happened there was, to complete the project, they needed X dollars more in funding, and that's where they got it.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, and that's been the only outflow,
Okay.
to my understanding, Erica, so far.
Okay.
How much money is in this fund?
191,000.
Yeah, just under 200.
And when do you expect to meet? You said you haven't met
The
in
ch-
many
I-
years. I mean,
I don't control it, and it's unfortunate, it was a committee that was set up kind of in an ad hoc way, so I need to see if I can work with Jeremy to push it forward. I'm relatively certain that the chair will not want to be part of it. Go forward, given, I know the guy fairly well, and he hasn't been responsive to this, and I think he's just focusing on other things. And I think when he was asked to chair at the time, it was not intended to be a real ongoing, active, proactive function. And now I think with all the need for affordable housing and the focus on affordable housing, that's something that needs to be visited. And then a decision can be made.
I can't remember if we talked it before the last RTM meeting, but the Westport RTM virtually unanimously approved at their February meeting, adding a $5 per thousand surcharge to anyone getting a building application. And they estimate that they will generate $1 million a year for their Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There's also a bill, I don't know if it's going to get anywhere, but making its way through the legislature to re-look at 830G, instead of making it one size fits all, to customize it for different communities. And so how aggressive that community is in terms of, we've been pretty aggressive in adding affordable housing units, but the more aggressive the community is, the better that will be in terms of what upcoming regulations from Hartford can be. And one of the things that got out of committee yesterday was that housing authorities can go into other towns to use their money to build housing. And it was amended that the New Haven has been, I guess, the most outspoken. You have to have an agreement with the town. It was added yesterday. You have to have an agreement with the town before you can go into their town to try to use your authority of your housing authority into another town. That was added yesterday in the Senate bill that's currently going, and that looks like it's going to pass.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, I think it's important for us, there's a lot going on in Hartford about the affordable housing, and as you know, we were mentioning, the 2006 Plan of Conservation, 2026 Plan of Conservation Development will include an affordable housing plan.
We haven't done it here, I'm not
So-
sure where that happened.
We need to
The
be,
Royal meaning the housing project Royal, not the school Royal.
so we need to be,
Let me
aware
clarify that.
of
Oh,
how
yeah.
Verify that.
When we talked about the Royal, we're talking about the housing project, not the school.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
So that was just a confusing point. And I want to
Yeah.
Can I
clarify
ask
that.
a question? I don't know if it's a dumb question, but if it's earmarked as affordable housing trust fund dollars, is there any special rules attached to that because it's deemed affordable housing? And I don't know if that's like a state or federal thing or.
I don't know the answer to that. 'Cause,
Okay.
I mean, I guess what I'll do this week, if I don't, I'll give him a couple more days to respond to the email that I sent tonight. And if not, I'll send an email to the entire committee, which if I remember off the top of my head, because we've never met, and since
I
I've been
have
on
it pulled up, I can tell you it's on the committee right now.
It's Steve Mulvaney, I believe, for planning and zoning. It's probably someone from Board of Finance, I'm not sure who.
Jim
Is it
Palin,
Jim? It's me for RTM.
Monica had been was an ex officio, but I don't know if that wasn't
And Joe-
updated because
Joe
she was
Warren,
first.
I assume?
Joe
Yeah,
Warren,
Joe's an ex officio member.
and the and Human Services Chairman,
Yeah,
I don't know.
and the chair has been from the public, which has been
Sam
is Sam Fuller.
Yeah, so I think that, again, this is where I think it's important for our committee to start to be paying attention to this and start thinking about ways that maybe we can help the commission and help the town with some of these issues, because they're not.
So, I mean, what I'll do is I'll draft an email that I'll send to the whole committee after giving Sam a few days. I'll send you a draft of it to make sure it covers enough of the points you want to make sure are covered. And we'll see where it goes from there.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But to answer some of the questions, there is an ordinance, and it says what you can use, expenditures from the fund can be
Yeah,
used
it's
for.
not
I mean,
very, it's not very deep.
No, it's not very deep, but it is,
Okay.
it's not open-ended either.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody could just decide to use it for their own
Right.
house or something like that.
Okay.
All right, anything else that we need to discuss as a group? No? All right, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Amy.